voice can break the dark. A single spark ignites the heart. But if we turn when justice calls, the chains we forge will bind us all. When truth is silenced, when lies take hold, the cost is freedom, the soul grows cold. No one stands tall while another must fall. Freedom for one depends on freedom for all. We're mavericks of freedom, rebels in the fight, defending every voice, defending every right. For the moment we falter, the moment we stall, we lose our own freedom when we let others fall. You can't stand free while others kneel. When justice fades, it's freedom they steal. An innocent condemned, a crime unspoken, and with it the bond of liberty is broken. No tyrant rules without our consent. Oppression thrives where silence is spent. Stand for the weak, the silence is small, or freedom will crumble for us all. We're mavericks of freedom, guardians of the light, fighting for the truth, for what is just and right. For the rights of one are the rights of all. We rise or we fall by answering the call. Even those we may oppose deserve the rights we all uphold. For if we deny them what is fair, we build our own prison in despair. The fight's not easy, it never will be, but justice for one is the key to be free. We stand as mavericks, together we strive, defending the rights that keep freedom alive. We're mavericks of freedom, rebels in the fight, upholding every truth, protecting every right. When one is oppressed, we're all in the thrall. Freedom for one depends on freedom for all. So take a stand, let your courage rise. Defend the truth, don't compromise. For the soul of the world, the writing's on the wall. Freedom for one depends on freedom for all.
Greetings, Mavericks and new viewers. Tonight, direct and live from the Maverick News Network World Studios. This is Maverick News with Rick Walker.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. We are going to go live to Truro, Nova Scotia to pick up the Conservative rally with Pierre Poilievre in just a moment. He is making his way to the stage. I am just letting the music play out here as he makes his way to the stage so we don't get a copyright strike. And as soon as we get rid of that audio that is so toxic to our channel, we will go live and pick up the stream. And we have a lot of other stuff to share with you tonight as well. Ukraine peace talks falling apart, Trump, of course, blaming Zelensky, and giving a little bit of a false history, I would say, to make himself look better than he really is. And some people think that we have an issue with free speech around here, and we're going to address that tonight too. What else do we have for you? Oh, at Canada's economic doomsday. a prophecy foretold in a government report. I'll touch on that tonight as well. That seems to be resurfacing, and I'll tell you why later in the broadcast. We did report on it back in January, but it's back in the headlines again. Gee, I wonder why. We'll outline what's going on with that, and we'll get into a little bit more of what's going on with the social media scene and the Canadian election, influencers. And I am monitoring what's going on out there in Nova Scotia. About to go live. Standing by. Houston, all systems are go. We are ready for launch in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There we go.
Central Nova. Who is voting to bring home change to Canada? Who's voting for homes you can afford for a change? Who's voting for affordable food in your grocery stores for a change? Who's voting for safe streets and communities for a change? And who's voting for a strong conservative government to restore the Canadian promise for a change? Wow. What an incredible crowd. This is amazing. This crowd speaks to the incredible hope that is breaking out right across our country. Hope that we can turn things around. Hope that we can rekindle the dream. Hope that hard work will once again pay off, and hope that we can put Canada first for a change. That's the hope we're voting for. Because this election comes down to one word only: change. Change, change, change. We need change. Because after a lost Liberal decade of rising costs of living and crime, we cannot afford a fourth Liberal term. We need a real change. Change so you can afford food. Change so you can afford housing. Change so you feel safe in your country under our proud flag again. That's what this election is about. But before I get into the speech, I have to take a moment to celebrate the legend. Look at these incredible people we have here. Look at this. What a great, incredibly hardworking people of Nova Scotia, and in particular, the legendary McKay family. Give it up to the McKays. Elmer.
Different tonight because Peter McKay introduced.
Starting with Elmer. Legendary parliamentarian, made way for Brian Mulroney, served in Parliament. He used to ask such precise and logical questions. The legend has it that Pierre Elliott Trudeau, then Prime Minister, would get so frazzled and angry by these questions, he would actually have to leave and go behind the House of Commons curtain and storm up and down in a huff. But of course, Elmer is a man of words. You know, at the last rally he attended, he suddenly took the mic away from me and began reciting a perfectly relevant excerpt of Shakespeare from the top of his head. He's been a great businessman. The McKay family has so many generations of contribution. The stories that I hear of, generations gone by where a poor family was struggling to physically build a home with their own hands. They ran out of lumber. And one day, a big pile of 2x4s and other wood just suddenly and magically appeared on their property. And they asked the neighbors, where did it come from? who said the McKay family heard that you run out of lumber, and of course they're in the lumber business, and so they dropped it off. And the family said, well, why do they do that? They don't even know me. But because that's what the McKays do. Isn't that the truth? The stories of single mothers and widows who were hungry and unable to buy a turkey dinner before Thanksgiving, and a ring at the doorbell would hit, and all of a sudden there would be a nice, beautiful frozen turkey left there by their then Member of Parliament. And then we've got Peter MacKay, the great Harper-era minister who served our country so well for so long, defense minister, justice minister, foreign affairs minister. You know, there was a time when I was a young man in Parliament, and I was making a lot of comments. My mouth was moving faster than my brain. You know, at that age when you get involved. I got into hot water a few times, so I went and saw Peter for a little bit of mentorship. And he brought me into his office. He was very calm and stoic. And he sat me down, and behind him on the wall was a stuffed fish that he brought from Atlantic Canada, proudly displayed on the wall. And I said, Peter, what's your advice? And he said, well, you see that fish up there? If he'd kept his mouth shut, he'd still be alive. Peter, as you know, were you nominated in this room right here? Was this the place where you won your nomination? Mulroney was nominated here. John A. MacDonald? Okay, you didn't know John A. MacDonald. You're not that old, Peter. Peter started his campaign when he was, you were 28 when you were nominated? 30. Okay, but you looked 28 at the time. He still looks great, eh? He looks like a Roman god, this guy, or something. Eh? It's unbelievable. Peter wasn't born, by the way. He was chiseled out of a big block of marble. We're embarrassing him. When he first ran for office, he said, we have to go visit our seniors. They built this country. And he showed up at a senior's home, and he walked up to a lady, and he said, do you know who I am? And she said, no, but if you ask the nurse, she'll tell you who you are. I think he's used that one on me a few times. But he was a great minister in our government. He gives so much wisdom, and he reminds us all of how good things were in the past and how much better they can be in the future. Peter MacKay is another reason for us to have hope. And boy, do we ever need hope these days, though. My goodness. Have you ever seen it this bad? Unbelievable. What an absolute mess the Liberals have made of our country. I need you too. I need you too. I need you to get out and vote. Have you all voted yet for a change? Well, I'll tell you why it's so important to vote. Because not only will things get worse not only will things not get better if you don't vote, they'll get a lot worse. Look at the mess we're in after the lost Liberal decade. Everything costs more. Food prices have risen 37% faster in Canada than they did in the United States over the last 5 years, while Mark Carney was Justin Trudeau's top economic advisor. Housing costs have doubled after out-of-control immigration and money printing extremely goosed the demand, while government bureaucracy blocked home building, in other words, stopping supply. Imagine, if government subsidizes the demand for something and then blocks the supply of that same thing, the laws of economics dictate that it's going to become extremely unaffordable. So the major causes of this were the immigration minister and the housing minister. And it turns out it's the same guy. One guy. Right. So Sean Fraser, as the immigration minister, increases our population growth by literally 200% to 1.3 million people in a time when we're only building about 200,000 homes. And then, as a punishment for that failure, that catastrophic mistake, they then move him over to make him housing minister, where he gives us the single most unaffordable housing market in the history of the country and among all G7 nations. And, you know, we thought that maybe he had a little bit of shame. He was going to go into retirement. As you would think, after a catastrophic record of ruining both immigration and housing, he would want to disappear quietly into obscurity. But then Mark Carney said, the kind of guy who ruins housing and immigration is exactly the kind of guy I need back in my cabinet. And that's all you need to know about Mark Carney. Now, liberals would like you to forget about the last lost liberal decade. They say, you know, let's just ignore it ever happened. Pretend it wasn't there, even though all the same liberal MPs, liberal ministers, liberal advisors are still running the liberal show. But I'm here to tell you that that liberal record is not just about the past. It's about a very dark future if they're reelected. Now, don't take my word for it. Look at this report. This is from the Government of Canada. It's got the logo of the government right here. Here, look real close so the media can't deny that it comes from the government. It says Canada at the bottom. It's got the Canada logo. And the government has confirmed this is a real document. And the reason I have to say that is because its findings are so horrific. They predict what Canada will look like on the current trajectory. Now let me turn to page 3. And the section is actually entitled, and I'm quoting here, "More Snakes Than Ladders." I'm not kidding. That's what they wrote. It's written down right here. In 2040, they predict, upward social mobility is almost unheard of in Canada. Hardly anyone believes they can build a better life for themselves or their children through their own efforts. However, many worry about sliding down the social order. Now, this is bureaucraties, but I can translate. I've been reading bureaucraties in the government for long enough. What this means is, no matter how hard you work, you won't be able to get ahead. In fact, you might start falling behind. Then they say that pursuing a post-secondary education will no longer be considered a reliable path to social mobility. In other words, you can study all you want, you can learn all you want, you still won't get ahead. Then they say, in 2040, people see inheritance as the only way to get ahead. Society, listen to this, society, and I'm quoting, society increasingly resembles an aristocracy. Wealth and status pass down the generations. Family background, especially owning property, divides the haves and the have-nots. In 2040, people rarely mix with others of different socioeconomic status. In other words, there's a tiny group of aristocrats on the top, and everyone else is left behind. They don't even talk to each other. Then they go on to say in this report, the Canadian economy could shrink and become less predictable. Capital for investment in new enterprises may concentrate in the hands of a small number of very wealthy older people. Property ownership, and by extension wealth, may become even more concentrated if generations abandon the idea of single-family dwellings in favor of renting or forming alternative households. That's exactly the liberal ideology, that nobody should own a home, everyone should just be stuck paying exorbitant rents in properties not big enough to raise families. Then they say people's mental health will suffer. More people struggle to afford rent, bills, and groceries. The resulting stress could worsen mental health challenges. This would increase demand for social services. Now, this last line is really most startling of all. They believe that people might have to look for alternative means of seeking sustenance, because food prices will become so unaffordable that no longer will working class people be able to go to the grocery store anymore. So we will go from what we have now, which is people go up to the till, and when they're paying, they actually have to put things back in the bag and send them back because the bank account is emptied before they've gotten through the entire bill. Worse than that, they say people will have to hunt, fish, and forage on public lands and waterways without reference to regulations. In other words, people will be in a position where they will need to feed themselves. That's right. That's a good point. You know, it's funny. You make a great point. We were on CBC the other day, had a panel about this report. And of course, the CBC talking head was saying, oh, come on, this is so exaggerated. That's never going to happen in Canada. And to her credit, one of the Globe and Mail reporters said, wait a sec here, for a lot of Canadians, this is the way it is right now. My friends, there are people in this country just hanging on by a thread, and it is for those people that we are fighting. We are here to give them hope and change and a better future. And we have the plan to do it. This is it. The Change book. Change. Change for an affordable life. Change for safe streets. Change for Canada First is our platform, newly released. A platform that cuts government spending by $55 billion with less bureaucracy, less consultants, less foreign aid, less waste and mismanagement. To bring down the deficit by 70%, reducing the amount we're adding onto our debt. We will cut income tax by 15% so your hard work pays off again. We will axe the sales tax on new homes so that you can save money and buy a place and put a roof over your head. And we will lock up the violent criminals the Liberals have put on the streets so you are safe in your community. For a change. For a change. But you need a team to deliver that change. And that is why I'm so excited that we have Nova Scotia's former finance minister, Alan McMaster, as our candidate in Cape Breton. Cape Breton. Coming up here, Alan. Good to see you. Thank you very much. You're excited to deliver some change for the people of Nova Scotia?
I sure am. We need it. I love these people. I go to the doors. They're the people I see. They're the people I want to represent. And you got me energized.
And what is your message from Cape Breton?
Our message is we're going to take this and we're going to change this country. We're going to start in Atlantic Canada. We're going to move right across the nation on Monday night.
Right on. Everybody, give him a round of applause. Way to go, Alan. Thank you. And then, of course, we have the great Dave Carroll. Come on up here, Dave. Great to have you. Did you hear what this guy did? Okay, you want a guy who's going to be able to get results in the government. I got to tell you a quick story. So he's on a United Airlines flight. They broke his guitar. He calls up the complaint line. He says, I want my money. I want you to buy me a new guitar. That's all. They put him on hold. They transferred him over to someone else. They sent him off to another place, and then they made him stay on hold. Then they gave him another 1-800 number, and the weeks went by, and he said, you know what? I'm going to write a song about this. What was it called?
United Breaks Guitars.
And how many listens did it get?
26 million views and counting.
And what did United decide to do after you got 26 million views on that song?
They ended up calling me on the phone, and they asked if we could do some settlement. Yes.
And did you get yourself a guitar?
I did get another guitar, and they ended up using my video to train their customers, or their staff at United Airlines, and they paid me a license fee to do it.
Wow. And now he's written a song about the Liberal government. What do you know? This is a man who knows how to use music and humor and fun. He's creative. He loves the people of the province and all of Canada, and he's ready to bring change. Thank you very much, my friend. Right on. Now, all right. Now, does anybody have an ache or a pain? Because we got a doctor in the house. Bring the doctor up here. Stephen Ellis. How are you? Good. I've got a little something here. Take a look at it. Stephen Ellis. Dr. Ellis, military veteran, medical doctor. He's going to help us bring change to our healthcare system. I can confirm he's a doctor because he has terrible handwriting. And he helped me come up with this incredible idea. He said, there's a doctor shortages right across this country. We have 20,000 immigrant doctors, 32,000 immigrant nurses banned from working because they can't get a license even when they're qualified. When I went into to get my eye surgery done, the lady, there was a gentleman there, first of all, who said he's a doctor in the United Arab Emirates. They fly him all the way there to do surgeries. When he comes here, back home, he's just a technician. So there's countless people like this. In Toronto, they say if you have a heart attack, don't call 911, call an Uber because the driver is probably a doctor. But so I said to Dr. Ellis, how are we fixing this? He said, do what we do in the trades. We got the red seal in the trades. You take a test, prove you're qualified, get the red seal stamped. You can work anywhere in the licensed sector. Let's do it in the professions. We'll create a blue seal professional standard so that we can license up those doctors. And you don't have to spend all the time in the waiting room. What do you think, doctor?
Let's get some health care for the 6.5 million Canadians who don't have access to our system. 6.5 million Canadians in Canada, unacceptable. Let's bring it home.
Let's bring it home for a change. Way to go, doctor. Thank you. Et maintenant, nous avons deux francophones. On a Chris d'Entremont et Monsieur Marc Boudreau. Marc, viens ici. Viens ici. Nos amis francophones.
Bienvenue tout le monde.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Boudreau.
Bonjour.
Est-ce qu'on va représenter les francophones, les Acadiennes, les Bréaux à travers le Canada?
On va le faire plus que les autres.
Exactement, on va faire changement. On ne peut pas nous offrir un 4e mandat libéral. Il faut que ça change avec un nouveau gouvernement qui va livrer une vie abordable et sécuritaire sous notre fier drapeau. Voilà. Oui, on est tannés, c'est ça, c'est vrai. Il est tanné, nous sommes tous tannés, il faut que ça change. What's your message to the people of Nova Scotia tonight?
Oh, change is coming. Change is coming. The last 10 years have been deplorable. We need the change. The fishery needs to change. All of Nova Scotia needs to change.
Change.
So we've got a lot of young people out helping out in Halifax. Some of them are here tonight, right there, the Boudreau Buchler.
Look at these kids. Brilliant. Amazing. Young people from Halifax.
And they're afraid that they're never going to be able to afford to own a home. That's why they're here tonight, for change.
Absolutely. Let's bring it home. Thank you very much, guys. Way to go. Thank you very much. And we have the great former Conservative Party President, Rob Batherson. Get up here, Rob. Rob is running in Halifax West. Halifax West, he's bringing the message of hope and change to the people on the doorsteps. And what are you hearing there?
Pierre, you are giving hope. You're giving hope to young people. You're giving hope to newcomers, new Canadians. You're giving hope to fishermen. You're giving hope to blue-collar workers. You're giving hope to entrepreneurs. And that's how we're going to get change, the hope and the leadership that you're providing. That's what I'm hearing in Halifax West.
Exactly. We need to change, everybody. Thank you very much. And we also have here the great Senator MacDonald. Senator, how are you? Can you give the senator a big round of applause? Give him he's not running for election. And last, but certainly not least, the man who's going to carry on the great McKay legacy. Everyone give it up for Bryson Jenkins. Where's Bryson? There he is. Look at this guy. What a guy. Bryson, you're half Peter's and I's age. So you're making us feel old. So what are the young people saying?
Pierre, it's all about affordability, right? All about affordable. They want to. I said I've been a real estate agent since 21, and you wouldn't believe the amount of young families that come to me and say, Bryson, we've done everything right. We went to school, got a post-secondary education, got a great job like our parents, and we can no longer afford to buy a home that our parents have been living here for generations. It's truly, and I wish that was a unique story, but we hear that all the time. So that's something that we're looking to change.
And Peter, when did you know that this was the guy for the job?
First time I met him.
Excellent. That's very decisive. Thank you very much, Bryce. Get in here one more time. Let's give it up for this guy. Come on over. It's a stark choice, my friends. Now, it would be bad enough if they had just stuck with Justin Trudeau. We thought it couldn't get any worse. Well, meet Mark Carney. He thought that the roughly $110 billion of new debt that Trudeau had already budgeted for the next 4 years was not enough. So he presented his platform on Saturday, which adds another $130 billion of debt and inflation on top of that. Now, let's be clear about this. If you add up the debt that Trudeau had planned and the promises that Carney has since made, and if you believe that they're even telling the truth and it's not worse than that, the Liberals plan to add $250 billion to our national debt if they are reelected. And that's just if you believe their numbers. And that will then snowball into more inflation. What causes inflation? More dollars chasing fewer goods. If you have an economy with 10 apples and $10, it's $1 an apple. You double the number of dollars in the economy to 20, but there's still only 10 apples, you're not twice as rich. It's just that now each apple costs twice as much. Now, this is very good if you're a billionaire or if you have your money stashed away in an offshore tax haven. Like, I don't know, can you think of anybody like that? Your assets go up in value, while the purchasing power of the working class and the retired senior goes down. It's a transfer of wealth from the have-nots to the have-yachts. Sounds an awful lot like what they describe in this government report, doesn't it? It means that a smaller and smaller group of aristocratic elites get richer, while the people who actually do the work, the laborers, the farmers, the entrepreneurs, they fall further and further behind. That has been the story of the last 10 years. And Mark Carney not only wants to continue it, he wants to accelerate it. It reminds us that we cannot afford the risk and the cost of a fourth Liberal term. We also have to provide people with hope that this can change. And that is why we have a very detailed plan to make it happen. I've announced, for example, we will roll back the cost of the federal government through attrition. Every time 3 public servants retire, we will only hire 2 back. 17,000 public servants leave every single year. We don't need to fill all those positions. Let's streamline the cost of the bureaucracy. We're spending $20 billion on consultants. That works out to $1,400 in federal taxation for every family in Canada just to pay for consultants. I will cut the annual budget for consultants by $10 billion for a change. And they're giving our money, they're sending our money out of the country. We can't feed our people at home, and they're giving money to foreign dictatorships. They give the Chinese government money to build pipelines and roads that they won't even approve here in Canada. They give money to a UN agency that collaborated with Hamas on the October 7th attacks. I will cut back $3 billion a year in foreign aid that was going to dictators, terrorists, and global bureaucracies. And we will bring in a common sense law to run the finances the way you run yours. When you spend more here, you have to spend less over there. That's how single moms, small businesses, and seniors run their budgets. If they want to do this and that, they have to find a bargain on both. Government doesn't have to do that. It's the only creature in the universe that doesn't face scarcity, because they just pass the scarcity on to everyone else in inflation, tax increases, and debt for the next generation to pay. But a new dollar-for-dollar law will require that politicians and bureaucrats find $1 of savings for every new dollar of spending, so that they will have to go into every time they want to spend more money, they're going to have to go hunting for the waste and mismanagement in their own departments in order to maximize use of scarce resources. Because you've been pinching your pennies long enough, it's time that government started pinching its pennies. This is how we're going to free up money to lower your tax burden. We have something called income tax. It's the fine you pay for the crime of hard work. The more you work, the more you pay. There's a great meme of a little kid crying in a park after his dad explained to him that income tax is just the opposite of his school report card. The better you do, the worse off you are, he explained. And we have to change that by making this a country that rewards hard work, by cutting income tax 15%. A working family with 2 average earning members will save about $2,000 a year, so that hard work actually benefits the person doing it. On top of that, we are going to axe the federal sales tax on new homes to save you up to $65,000. We want you to also... The biggest cost that goes into a new home today is not land, labor, or lumber. It's bureaucracy and taxes. Usually about 30% of the cost of the home is just direct taxes. And then there's all the indirect costs that come with delays and consultants and lawyers and lobbyists and forms that have to be filled out and time that is taken and wasted. We need to cut back on that bureaucracy and on those taxes, because today more money goes to bureaucrats than goes to the carpenters, electricians, and plumbers that actually build the homes. So I will incentivize municipalities to cut their development charges, including by paying for half the cost of every reduction they make. My goal will be to get those charges down by $50,000 a house, so that if you knock off the sales tax, you knock off those local building taxes, you can make a house $100,000 cheaper and more affordable for people to buy. That's the carrot, but there's also going to be a stick. Municipalities will be required to increase the number of permits they grant every year by 15%, and if they don't, I will cut back on the federal money that the government sends them from Ottawa. We need to incentivize them to speed it up, and we're going to sell off enough land, federal land, to build 300,000 additional homes. You add it all up. You add it all up, and we will build 2.3 million homes over 5 years, so that our young people can once again afford to start a family for a change. But we have to address the other side of the equation. And I'm sorry that it might be politically incorrect to say it, but we have to reverse the nightmare that Sean Fraser and the Liberals caused in the immigration system. We just have to. Sean Fraser let in so many false international students that in the city of Brampton, they discovered there were literally 26 of them living in one basement of one house. That's the kind of insanity that the Liberal government has unleashed, particularly your local Liberal MP. And we're going to reverse that. We're going to end the fraud in the system, stop false international student claims, stop multinational companies from bringing an excess number of temporary foreign workers that drive down wages for our people. Temporary foreign workers should be used to fill legitimate job vacancies, particularly on farms, but never to drive down the wages of our people or to take jobs that willing Canadians would otherwise be willing to take. And we're going to stop the false refugee claims. We're going to ensure that anyone with a criminal background is totally inadmissible to our country. And we will cap numbers, we'll cap immigration so that never again does our population grow faster than the number of homes, jobs, and healthcare services. Never again. want people who come here to be happy and housed and employed. By the way, I don't blame the people. They're just looking for a better life. I blame the total incompetence of the Liberal government. And we're going to fix that. We're going to reverse that. We're going to bring back the best immigration system in the world. And we're going to ensure that Canadians are able to live in peace and tranquility. In many small towns, it wasn't long ago, I think you'll agree, Peter, that people didn't even have to lock their doors. You could fall asleep on your front porch knowing that you'd be totally safe there. You certainly didn't worry that your car would be missing if you woke up in the morning and walked out the front door. But all that has changed. Rampant crime is the result of Liberal laws that release the same repeat offenders again and again onto our streets. Liberal law, C-75, catch and release. This is what it actually says. I'm going to quote from the law. It says the judge must release the accused at the, quote, earliest opportunity under the least onerous conditions. So you could be, in some cases, there are people who have been convicted 100 times before. They are newly arrested, and they are released before the paperwork on their arrest is even complete. I spoke to a police officer yesterday who says he regularly arrests the same person twice in the same day. That's how crazy it is. In Vancouver, they had to arrest the same 40 offenders 6,000 times. 6,000 times. That means each one of these guys was arrested once every 2 days, all year long. They've got to be working at it all the time. These guys are hardworking. They don't even have benefits. They're not unionized. They do get room and board. They check in, but then they check out. It's like the Hotel California. They check out, but they never really leave. And then, that's right, it's worse than that. It's dangerous policies. And this is proof that we cannot risk the danger of a fourth Liberal term. We also have C5, catch, this is the house arrest law. So you can be a career car thief who's stolen hundreds of cars, and you serve your sentence in the comfort of your living room watching Netflix or playing Grand Theft Auto. It's gotten so bad. You know, there was an attempted robbery on Parliament Hill the other day. Well, robber walks up, pulls out a gun, says to the guy, "Give me all your money." The guy says, "Wait a second here. I'm Mark Carney." The robber said, "Well, in that case, give me all my money." Oh. And then you've got C-83, the Liberal law that allows Paul Bernardo out of a maximum security penitentiary. My friends, let me tell you something. We know how to fix this problem because Peter MacKay already did it as Justice Minister. With a tough-on-crime agenda, Peter was able to bring down the crime rate in our country by 25%. And we need the same change to do it all over again. Here's the plan. 1, we will repeal the catch and release bail law, the house arrest law, and the Paul Bernardo get out of jail free law. All those laws will be gone within the first 100 days when I'm Prime Minister. Then, we will go much further than that. I will pass a 3 strikes you're out law. 3 serious convictions, never again is the person eligible for bail, parole, probation, or house arrest. It will be jail, not bail. Jail, not bail. There will be no more parole. Parole will not exist as a concept for serious offenders. What there will be is earned release. You serve your full sentence, and you're still not eligible to leave unless you have perfect behavior, clean drug tests, and you've learned an employable skill so that we know you're actually going to be doing a legitimate law-abiding job when you get out of jail. We're also going to go after the most serious offenders. For example, human trafficking. And human trafficking will be targeted. Life sentences for human traffickers. We'll lock them up and throw away the key. We will go after the gun smugglers. You know, the Liberals are determined to ban your hunting rifle. Any hunters in the room today? Hunters. We've got a lot of hunters here. People in the Pictou County. What's that?
How are we supposed to hunt for food in 50 years?
You raise a very good point. Oh my goodness, I think this is a very good point. So this gentleman says, on the one hand, the Liberals say it's going to get so expensive you won't afford groceries, so you have to go foraging and hunting, but then they want to ban your hunting rifle. Well, how good are you with archery? Who is this guy? Do you know this guy, Peter? He's fun. Oh, it's hilarious. Well, I'll tell you something. You've got a lot better vision for the country with one eye than Trudeau and Carney have with two. So I'll tell you about my vision on this. First of all, we are going to defend the rights of hunters and licensed, law-abiding sport shooters. They are not the problem. Instead, we're going to secure our borders with high-powered scanners that can look into shipping containers. 2,000 more frontline CBSA officers, watchtowers along the whole distance of our border to keep guns, drugs, stolen cars, and other paraphernalia from crossing over the border. We will pay for it by canceling the ridiculous multi-billion-dollar gun grab, and we will cut the back office bureaucracy to put it into frontline security for our people. There will be life sentences for large-scale drug smugglers and gun smugglers. Putting them behind bars will immediately make our lives more safe. And that brings me to my next point, which is probably the greatest tragedy of the lost Liberal decade, the 50,000 beautiful souls that we've lost to drug overdoses. Opioids. Drug companies spread them around, pushed them on our medical system, said there was no risk whatsoever of addiction or overdose. And of course, we all know the tragic history. They were lying. They knew they were lying. And the government's solution has been to pay these same drug companies to provide what they call a safe supply of additional drugs to flood our streets. They have basically legalized hard drugs, and they've removed penalties. We will do exactly the opposite. We will recriminalize the drugs. We will give life sentences to anyone caught selling more than 40 milligrams of fentanyl. And we will invest in treatment and recovery, counseling, group therapy, detox, job training, physical exercise. We're going to turn lives around. When I was in Moncton not long ago, I went to Harvest House and met an incredible group of volunteers who were actually getting young men and women off of drugs. And when I sat down with those young men, they said, "Thank you for your help." And I said, No. I'm not here. I'm not the one that's doing the helping. You're the one that's going to help me. I'm here to tell you that I need you. I need you to get better, because you're going to go out on the street and you're going to reach down and grab the next guy and you're going to pull him in here and he's going to get better, and then he's going to go back out on the street and bring people in. And through that virtuous cycle, we're going to turn this thing around. I need you. My message to people who are addicted today, I need you. So hang on, have hope, help is on the way. A better future for all of our people, including those who are going through the hardest times. We're going to be a safe country again, for a change. But to be safe, we will never be the 51st state. You're right about that, absolutely right. We will be Canada. Canada first, Canada always, Canada forever. We're going to stand up for our country and bring home our jobs and our resources. We're going to unlock the power of our resources so that we're no longer so hopelessly dependent on the Americans. You know, the Liberals have blocked pipelines, trying to shut down our oil and gas sector. They want to bring in an industrial carbon tax that will shut down our major industries. That's the thing that Trump and Carney share in common. They both want to tax Canadian industry. I don't want to tax them with carbon taxes or with tariffs. I want to unleash our industry, approve pipelines, repeal C-69, bring home our production so we can stand up for Canada from a position of strength for a change. And that includes having a stronger military. As great Peter MacKay helped us rebuild our forces in the past, we will rebuild it again. We will having cut back on foreign aid, back office bureaucracy, and on procurement boondoggles. The money will go to the front lines in recruitment to fill the many vacancies. We'll buy 4 Arctic icebreakers to open up and dominate over our Arctic waters again. Poseidon aircraft. New runways across our Arctic lands, double the size of the first patrol group of the Great Arctic Rangers, the mostly Inuit-led group that protect our sovereignty in our northern lands. And we will open the first Canadian base in the Arctic since the Cold War, CFB Iqaluit. We will unite our people around the common purpose of putting our country first. We'll be a nation that looks after its vulnerable, protects its borders, provides safe streets, builds homes for its youth, rewards hard work, honors its entrepreneurs, rebuilds its military, and restores its freedom as we fly our flag. This is a country that is not made up of tax collectors and toll masters, of bureaucrats and busybodies, of gatekeepers and grandees, of rulers and rule makers. No, this is a nation of entrepreneurs and adventurers, of artists and explorers, a nation of workers and warriors, of pioneers and patriots. What unites us, what brings us together, is a promise that anyone from anywhere can achieve anything, that any kid, no matter where he's born, or how far down his family may have fallen, he is able to climb up to any great height, that every child that born in this country believes that they have limitless potential through their own hard work and their God-given gifts. A nation that has allowed me, as the adopted son of school teachers, to be told that I could stand on this incredible stage in front of these incredible patriots, a country that gives the opportunity for anyone from anywhere to achieve anything. The Canadian promise that hard work gets you a great life in a beautiful and affordable house on a safe street, protected by brave troops and veterans under our proud flag. This is the Canada we know. This is the Canada we love. Let's bring it home.
And he closes with that slogan. Pretty good crowd out there in Truro, Nova Scotia. Let's pull that down. That ends the feed. And we have a lot of other stuff to talk about tonight. And I'm going to come back and make reference to his reference to that economic report or forecast from the federal government. I think it's a Privy Council report. I'm going to talk about that. And then I'm going to take this dot and a dot over here and a dot over there. And I'm going to connect that report to all those dots. And then you'll have, I hope, a clearer picture of why that report is being highlighted and who's reinforcing it. So don't go away, because we have a lot more to talk about tonight. Let me run this and I'll be right back.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, I'm back, and I don't know if my microphone was muted just before we went to break there, but I think we're back up and running now, if that wasn't the case. So as I said, in case you didn't hear me, I'm going to be making reference to that economic report that Pierre Poilievre was making reference to, and I'm going to show you who else is making reference to it as well, to connect some dots and help you make sense of things, give you a wider perspective on the way everything is really being choreographed behind the scenes during this election. Now, I will say that Pierre Poilievre really campaigning hard, because he was out in Ontario earlier making an announcement on making changes that will allow police to dismantle what they're calling illegal encampments. That would be basically people without a home. And a lot of these people would have those issues like drug addictions that he's also been addressing. So we'll see how all that plays out. Are they really going to deal with the social problem if he's elected and help the people and get them back on their feet? Or will this turn into something less than positive, where the problem just is swept off the streets and swept under the carpet? You know, sometimes government programs through history have had that kind of approach, telling people that people are being helped when in fact they're kind of being warehoused. I don't know. You know, you hope that we come up with plans that actually do help people. Speaking of plans to help, Carney out in BC with a plan to protect BC from the impact of U.S. tariffs. At least that was the theme of what he had to say today. So we'll, in fairness, give him some time here on screen as well. And here we go.
I'm always thrilled to come back here, back to the island, back to Victoria. I have family up island, and I know my sister, I believe, is watching. So hello, Brenda. And working for you, Michelle, actually, volunteering in Nanaimo. It's great to be here, as I say, to be in the heart of Victoria, to talk about our plan to build BC and to build Canada strong. And we need that plan because we are facing the biggest crisis of our lifetimes. President Trump is attacking Canada, America's closest ally, America's closest partner. Il menace nos entreprises. Il menace nos travailleurs.
And interestingly,
il menace
les
économies de nos retraités.
The trade war between
President
China
Trump is trying to break us
escalated
so that America can own us. Now, that will never happen. We will get through this crisis if we come together, if we unite our country around a bold plan rooted in shared values. Here in British Columbia and across Canada, I'm asking you to vote with me for positive reasons, regardless of which party you voted for and supported in the past. Because this is the time for serious leadership of a united country. We need to come together so we can fight President Trump together. Because President Trump wants to divide us. It makes his job easier. In BC and across Canada, we need to be united in order to be Canada strong. Nous répondons avec de la force et de la détermination. Nous nous battons contre ces tarifs injustifiés, avec des contre-tarifs qui auront un impact maximal aux États-Unis et un impact minimal ici au Canada. Nous protégeons nos travailleurs et nos entreprises et nous allons utiliser chaque dollar tiré de nos contre-tarifs pour le faire. Par-dessus tout, nous bâtissons un Canada fort. Nous devons comprendre ce que nous pouvons et devons changer. Nous sommes maîtres chez nous. Nous pouvons contrôler notre propre destin économique. We can control our economic destiny with the right plan. Because in a crisis, plan beats no plan. And to succeed in a crisis, you need to act with overwhelming force, to overcome the anxieties that people naturally feel, to break through the fog of uncertainty that businesses face, and above all, to replace what the crisis is taking away. As the private sector retreats, government needs to step up to provide positive direction, to drive action, and to catalyze investment. And that's what our plan to build Canada strong will do. Now, in President Trump's trade war, British Columbia is being directly targeted. British Columbians have fought unjustified forestry tariffs before. But now the president is escalating this dispute far beyond anything we've experienced by doubling the duties charged on softwood lumber. Les tarifs visant le bois d'œuvre canadien, comme tous les tarifs mis en place par le président Trump, sont injustes, injustifiés et mal avisés. Nous ne pouvons pas changer le président Trump. Malgré tous les torts infligés, tant aux États-Unis qu'au Canada, il croit agir dans l'intérêt de son pays. Nous devons prendre notre destin en nos mains. Nous avons le pouvoir de le faire. Nous devons voir en grand. We can deal with this crisis best by building our strength here at home. And that starts with recognizing our strengths. Here in BC, that begins with the world-class mining, energy, and forestry industries. It extends to cutting-edge innovation in home building and in clean technologies. It includes easy access to growing Asian economies that want everything that British Columbia and Canada has to offer. Above all, it's BC's greatest strength. It's hard-working, innovative, and ambitious people. Now, this crisis also highlights where we have fallen short and what we need to fix. Nous avons mis trop d'œufs dans le même panier. Nous sommes devenus trop dépendants aux États-Unis.
Okay. So he's out there in BC, and that's not by accident. That's probably because there's a crisis, not just for, well, for a bunch of the politicians out there in various ridings, including Jagmeet Singh. And I'll show you why there's a crisis brewing out in BC. There's some really tight races out there on the West Coast. In fact, it looks like Jagmeet Singh's own riding might be in question. Here's the CTV report, one of many surfacing tonight. 2 federal party leaders face uncertain future in battleground BC. And it says here, with 5 days left in the federal election, British Columbia ridings that were long safe appear to suddenly be up for grabs, including those held by the leaders of the NDP and the Green Party. Michael Prince, a political scientist at the University of Victoria, says Jagmeet Singh's riding of Burnaby Central isn't the only NDP stronghold at risk this year. He says, quote, "I think the future of the NDP is at stake here." It just goes on and details this more, but it also highlights the future of Green Party co-leader Elizabeth May hanging in the balance as well in British Columbia. She's in the riding of Saanich Gulf Islands, and she has only a very slim lead, or rather the Conservative candidate there has a very slim lead over her in the polls. That candidate's name is Kathy Unstead, and it looks too from the polling nationally that the NDP might be at risk of losing official party status. Let's take a look at the 338 poll tonight and see how that's shaping up. There you go, 188 seats for the Liberals. If the election were held today, the Conservatives would secure 123, Bloc Québécois 22, NDP only 9. That is a drop. I think, would they have last election 14 or something like that? So we'll see. And we're getting different polling results from different polling companies. But it is close, I think. And it's largely going to come down to how the ridings, how the distribution of seats through the ridings winds up. It's not just about, the Conservatives ahead or the Liberals ahead by 3 points or 6 points. It's about the distribution of power. So the Conservatives generally have a disproportionate advantage in Western Canada, the Liberals more in the East and Central Canada, like in Ontario, Quebec, and there you have a lot of ridings in there, a lot of seats, because the population is heavier there, only 5 million or so in Alberta, but you'll go pretty much solid Conservative, I think, in this election in Alberta. But even out in BC, I think we're seeing a bit of a blue wave happening out there, and it's coming at the expense, I think, of the NDP, the Greens, those parties sort of over on the left. And then I won't run the clip here tonight because it's all in French, but PPC leader, People's Party of Canada leader, Maxime Bernier, in an interview, also of interest, saying that a lot of the candidates that the PPC lined up heading into the election, as before the writ dropped, a lot of them backed out sort of at the last minute. And there's some allegations out there that there might have been some dirty business going on with the Conservative Party. That's not me saying it. That is coming, I think, directly from Maxime Bernier himself. I don't know what evidence he might have to back that up. I did watch the clip. No subtitles, no translation. I don't speak French well enough, hardly at all, to really understand the detail and what he was saying, but it was sent to me just before airtime. Very interesting to hear him talking like that, even in French. So we'll look into that a little bit more. And if there were shenanigans, getting Conservative operatives in place in certain ridings and then having them slip into the roles of running for a candidacy and securing the nomination, only to then drop out at the last minute. And there was quite a bit of that did happen. I did take note. In fact, it happened in the riding that I'm in right here. And as a result, they had to scramble and they got a candidate at the last minute, but I don't think that candidate is even from this riding. They're parachuting someone in to run, which is not good for the party. And they are certainly not in a position of strength the way that they were previously. So we'll see how all that plays out as well. Now, I will draw your attention to this. You may recall in that speech with Poilievre tonight that he was talking about this government report, right, on the economy. So I made some notes here. So what we have here is this. It's a story that is sparking a lot of conversation, and it's this report from the Privy Council's office called from Policy Horizons Canada. It's called Future Lives, Social Mobility in Question. That's the report that Poilievre kept holding up, and he's been making reference to it for the past couple of days. So it's shifted the narrative in the election a bit. Carney not really talking about it. Mainstream media not really talking much about it, except for, I did notice, the Toronto Sun. They came out with a story a couple of days ago about it. In fact, here it is. I'll show you on screen. And this all ties into all this talk about the media last night that we had on the program. Just to give you further context, and I really just kind of zeroed in on this about 2 hours before we came online tonight. And there's the Toronto Sun report. Government report predicts 2040 dystopia, collapsed economy, hunting for food. The funny thing about this, though, is, I don't know if it's funny, but I was like, wait a minute. When he started talking about this, when Poilievre started talking about it, I reported on that months ago. And indeed, I did. That report was released way back in January, the beginning of the year. It is now April going into May. January, February, March, April. January, February, March, 4 months ago. That report was released. And now it's coming back up. So he's talking about it in his speeches, fair enough. But look at the headline. Government report predicts 2040 dystopia, like it's something new that just came out. It's a minor point, sort of, except that, a news organization is always looking for some hook to hang a story on. But that report was released back in January. I did probably a good 15 or 20-minute segment on it, as I recall, at the time when it was initially released. And it does raise some really serious questions, painting a pretty bleak, dark, possible economic future. But it is a projection. It's not a definite thing. It's suggesting that the economy might be in for a dark future if we remain on our current path. But it doesn't mean that we have to hit the panic button. It's not a crystal ball prediction. It's a wake-up call, though, for sure. A chance for us all to come together and shape a brighter future, I guess. And as Poilievre is highlighting there, it highlights, well, actually, the way he frames it is not the way that the report quite frames it, because the report, which comes from the Privy Council office, actually kind of frames it more in a liberal, social context, is saying that there are concerns about wealth inequality growing, home ownership slipping out of reach. And that's sort of the key to the whole thing. It's a focus on wealth inequality. The rich get richer, the poor get poorer. Poilievre did highlight it in that way too. But he's not really framing it in terms of, wealth redistribution, which is sort of a socialistic idea, right? A liberal concept. But he is latching on to the dream of working hard to get ahead and highlighting the fact that this report makes that seem like it might become a relic of the past. The report warning that by 2040, family background, especially whether you own property, could lock in your economic fate. you're going to be kind of trapped by your socioeconomic conditions, creating a society that feels more like an aristocracy than the Canada we know now. Renters and property owners might clash with skyrocketing housing costs and intergenerational mortgages, making it tough for young people to break through. And add to that the rise of artificial intelligence, shrinking job opportunities in creative and knowledge fields, pushing more folks into gig work. The report even suggests some might struggle to afford basics like groceries, which some people seem to be struggling with now, especially as I'm looking at prices in the grocery store even over the past week, because largely of the tariffs and economic uncertainty, and turning to foraging even, or informal economies to get by, going back to live off the fat of the land by going hunting. So it's a pretty stark scenario. But it doesn't mean that it's a foregone conclusion. It just means that if we stay on this path, they're predicting that this could be a problem. But over time, yes, we can take steps, and hopefully we will as a society, to make sure that that doesn't happen through elections and electing people who will guide us into a brighter economic future, and not just continue to do the same things over and over and over and over again. It's not a verdict, it's a conversation starter, really. And I don't think that the report is really meant to just take this black paintbrush and paint a dystopian future. And we see both leaders of both parties laying out plans that they think will lead us to better times, I guess. And you can assess that for yourself and decide who you think is a better choice for you out of all the choices, and then vote accordingly. And there are some people out there tonight, and this is where I segue into the whole conversation about media and the way it's impacting the election right now. What I have noticed is that this report, which came out way back in January, now being highlighted, not just by the Toronto Sun, which is a conservative-leaning mainstream media newspaper. It has been for as long as I can kind of remember. Toronto Star, more liberal. Sun, conservative. It also appeals more to, I'd say, the working class, okay? Now, that being said, the Toronto Sun, with that report just a few days ago, I think that was one of the first mainstream media outlets to resurrect, to refocus on that story. Poilievre, at the exact same time, talking about it in his campaign. And I think the story came out just before Poilievre started to talk about it. Coincidence? I don't think so. It's kind of the way these things work. But why? Why bring it back up? I don't really see any new context, new information in the reports. It's the same report from back in January. I know that other mainstream media reported on it at the time, but Sun brings it up, gives Poilievre additional reason or a hook to hang his speech on at that time. And I can't be certain which came first. Was it Poilievre mentioning it and then the Sun? But they're not really using Poilievre's speech as the hook. They're just reporting on the report again, as framing it as though it's some new thing. And they're not the only one. Remember last night, I highlighted in the phone-in section of the broadcast that we have this sort of decentralized network of conservative, independent journalists. It's very interesting. Look at this. Okay, here's my friend. He's been a friend since the convoy, and I haven't spoken to him about this. I'd be interested in getting his take. Definitely in the conservative camp. I know that you guys are all familiar with our good friend Derek Smith over at Unacceptable Fringe. And look what he's reporting on. This. Government report predicts 2040 dystopia, collapsed economy, hunting for food. He's making reference to that Toronto Sun article, and he's reporting on it. Who else is reporting on it? Let me just find here. Oh, here we go. No big surprise to me. Will it be a surprise to you? I don't know. Hang on. We're freezing up here, folks. There we go. Okay. And here's another YouTube channel. One of the newbies getting a lot of traction at their Moose on the Loose. Same story. Same report. Carney snaps when grilled by economists, plus new Liberal report. New Liberal report. It's not new. It came out in January. Canada on the brink of collapse. And we talked about clickbait. Pretty effective headline. So we got that. Who else do we have? Here we are. Our other good friend here. Clyde Do Something. And I haven't spoken to these guys. I'm just observing. Here it is. Clyde Do Something. Same story. This may be our last chance. Canada's dystopian future. We're all going to die. So you can go down the list. I think everybody on the circuit there has gone to bat here on that story to knock a ball out into the outfield for the Conservatives on that side. I'm just observing. It's, I think, worth noting because there does appear to be some real coordination there, right? Is it coincidence? Or is it by design? These guys, no, they're different, like all of us, right? We're all supposed to be different than the mainstream media because this would never happen with independent live streamers and podcasters, would it?
The sharing of biased and
false news has become all too common on social media.
More alarmingly, some media outlets simply aren't true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think, and this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
In an ocean of lies a century deep, the truth awaits. Choose not the red pill. Choose not the blue pill. For both are an illusion. Discover the power of M. The power of individuality. We are mavericks. We are the way to the light. Fear not the storm. Join our quest for truth. Truth will set you free. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Also, interestingly, I think pretty much every one of those live streamers from Western Canada, the Prairies, Alberta, just about all of them, and then right on cue, here's Keith Wilson, Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, the lawyer who sort of fronted the Freedom Corp, which kind of became responsible for all the money that came in during the Freedom Convoy. And Keith Wilson out there, a very public figure during the Freedom Convoy. I guess he went there to fight for Canada, but here he is, longtime dedicated separatist from Alberta, and right on cue, he's sharing these, or at least this social media post from Clyde Do Something on the report that basically paints Canada with this dark brush and talking about the dystopian future that we face, which, of course, you know, if you don't have faith in the country, might as well separate, right? He says here, shocking Privy Council office leak. Leak? It's a report. It's not a leak. Canada could face economic collapse in 15 years, leaving the poor to hunt for food while the wealthy flee to gated communities. As social mobility dies and the nation spirals into chaos, Alberta and Saskatchewan must act now. Let's see what else it says. To secure their future through independence. Let's choose prosperity over poverty. Time is running out. Yeah. Just give up now. Just throw in the towel. Screw Canada. Yeah, it's a leak. No, it's not. It's a report that came out back in January, Keith. Okay? But like the dedicated separatist that you are, trying to rip the country apart while wrapping yourself in the Canadian flag. Sorry. I am editorializing just a little bit. Who cares about their country? Does anybody care about Canada anymore? Am I the only one who's a true patriot? Now, there's a slogan I think we should adopt right here on Maverick News. True patriots, not just a patriot. Because I think some of these people using that phrase, patriot, yeah, I'm not so sure that they're Canadian patriots. Maybe you're an Alberta patriot, or maybe you're a Canadian with an affinity to our neighbors to the south. And maybe by default, you're falling into becoming a American patriot, wrapping yourself in the phrase, we the people, which is an American thing. That's not Canada. Not to say that that concept doesn't apply to some degree up here in Kazakhstan, but that's not Canada. It's not we the people up here. And I see people painting it on their trucks. But hey, it depends on what media you watch, and it depends on where you're getting your information, and it depends on what half-truths and spin and politics you're being immersed in on a daily basis. And, you know, this guy here, I don't normally agree with him very much, but Brian Howell, our good friend up in Kingston, was generous with his time again today. A good friend and supporter of the program, sometimes contributor, and he contributed today just by sending me this link from, what's this guy's name again? Kyle Kalinske. And this ties into everything we've been talking about, and about, you know, this illusion, I would say, of impartiality with a lot of these independent live stream podcasters, YouTubers, influencers, not necessarily journalists, influencers, which means they're trying to influence you. And why are they doing that? Because, as Kyle is about to explain, thereby reinforcing everything that I was talking about last night and have for the past few nights with regard to media, only to make everyone more media literate in this new media, this new medium of social media. He's basically, where I'm kind of in alignment with him on this. A lot of things I don't agree with him on. He does this live stream called The Secular Report. And some things I agree with, some things I don't. But I do believe in free speech, and I'm always open to new ideas. And he's a very smart guy. And I think in this particular case, where we would be wise to have a listen to what Kyle has to say. So I'm going to let some of this roll.
I have largely come to despise the space that I'm in. And when I say that, what I mean is so-called independent media, right? Or new media, however you want to refer to it. It's all bullshit. It's all bullshit. Because a lot of the big names in this business, they are not independent by any stretch of the imagination. They are not really new by any stretch of the imagination. Really what they are fake independent media or new corporate media. And the reason I say that is because they're talking to the same corporations that the major networks talk to. They're getting the same sort of fucking brand deals that the others are. These people, a lot of the people in this business care more about the business side of it than they do about the stuff they say on air, which actually matters, right? News, information, facts, ideology. That's like secondary to like, where can I get my check, right? And so I've come to despise this space, mostly because people in this space still love to suck themselves off like they're special, while at the same time falling prey to the same malincentives that mainstream media does. And so case in point, I mean, there's a million people we could talk about here, but case in point, Tim Pool. Tim Pool, as you all know, he recently had this massive scandal, both him, Dave Rubin, there were some others as well who I'm blanking. Matt Christensen, I believe, was another one. There was a few of them. And what happened was there was this media company called Tenet Media run by Lauren Chen, who was also herself a conservative commentator. And she was taking in funds, and she basically had on her network Tim Pool and Dave Rubin and all these other people. And come to find out, you know, the feds had to get involved because Lauren Chen was basically taking massive amounts of money from the Russian government.
Like
now,
$1 million dineros,
according to the indictment and according to many of the people involved, both Tim Pool and Dave Rubin didn't really know that the money was coming from Russia. But Tim's dodge was like, look, I just thought there was some shadowy billionaire that was funding Tenet Media, which is quite a dodge because to me that is just as bad. I thought some nameless, faceless billionaire was giving me hundreds of thousands of dollars to spew my propaganda, which is good for billionaires. Oh, well, aren't you so fucking exonerated, bitch? Like, what the fuck? What a dodge that is. Now, I believe it was Dave Rubin who wanted more evidence, and they sent this, like, fake portfolio with, like, Edward Gregorian was the name or something, and it was so fake, and it just showed, like, here's this billionaire, and it got into, like, everything was vague, and I guess Rubin was like, that's good enough. Actually, he had one issue. The issue was something on the resume said something about social justice, and he was like, disgusting, I'm against that, right? But anyway, so in my mind, just the facts on the case as they are, even if you take the most kind interpretation to the Tim Pools and the Dave Rubins, these people are barbecue chicken. Like, nobody in their audience should ever trust them ever again. You know, there are ways to do this and keep it relatively pure. The way to do it and keep it relatively pure is what? Small dollar donations from the audience. We have a Patreon. We have a Substack for Crystal Kyle and friends. Small dollar donations. People give $2 a month, $5 a month, $7 a month, whatever it is. That's what keeps the show going. Outside of that, I just have the default ads on YouTube, which I have nothing to do with. There's a giant buffer between me and the ad team. I'm fine with that ethically as well, right? That's all. Anytime you start talking to advertisers, you start talking to big money interests, things get fucking squirrely, dog. Because then you have all these bad incentives, and you end up in the same place mainstream media is in. Okay. Now, having said all that, Tim Pool has been nothing but rewarded for being a fake independent media hack, a new corporate media hack. Why? Because in the age of Trump, they just want people who are going to suck them off, right? That's why you have Newsmax, One America News Network. You have all these freaks and weirdos and losers who go in there, Mr. Trump, how is your golf game so good, sir? You won the tournament, I heard. That's amazing. Did you have fun, sir? How are you so good at keeping the gangsters and thugs and criminals out of the country, sir? Like, we've seen it. We've covered all this. Sometimes it was so humiliating. Even Trump seemed to feel like, a little too much. You're pouring it on too heavy. But so Tim Pool comes to the White House. You ready for this? He gets the first question.
Yesterday? I think it was yesterday.
To the White House press secretary. This is what I mean. This gives a bad name to all of what people view as new media or independent media. Again, he's not that, but that's how people broadly categorize him.
It's true.
This gives a bad name to all independent media, new media. It is now official. So-called independent media may be worse than mainstream media. Look at the sycophantic, ball-coddling ass question he asked. Ready?
Many of the news organizations that are represented in this room have marched in line.
Homie was just ripping Zelensky a new asshole for not wearing a suit to the White House. Now look at him. This day was 80 degrees in D.C. He still had on his fucking beanie. He was in Mar-a-Lago wearing his beanie. But I don't see a fucking suit.
That's
and look,
true.
Do I care?
I never thought
I don't
about
care.
it just because I'm so
but the
used
point
to
is,
seeing him
he
wear it.
cared when he was using it to bash Zelensky. But now all of a sudden, okay, anyway, let's keep going. We're just getting started here.
In this room have marched in lockstep on false narratives, such as the Very Fine People hoax, the Covington smear, and now what's being called the Maryland Man hoax, where an MS-13 gang member adjudicated by 2 different judges, I believe.
That is completely and utterly false. That is a lie. That is malicious. That is untrue. Anybody who's done a deep dive on this knows that is untrue. The administration is lying and Tim Pool is lying when they keep saying Kilmar Abrigo Garcia is an MS-13 gang member.
Simply being referred to as a Maryland Man over and over again.
Because he is that.
Now, in an effort from the White House to expand access to new companies, you've created this new media seat. So I'm wondering if you can comment on following this expansion, you've had numerous outlets disparage the companies that you've had sit here, as well as the reporters. I'm wondering if you could comment on that unprofessional behavior, as well as...
fucking wrap it up, homie. Holy shit. I know you love to hear yourself talk, but god fucking damn it. This is not about you. These questions are supposed to be, get pithy with it. Come on, motherfucker. Jesus Christ. This is embarrassing.
If you could comment on that unprofessional behavior, as well as elaborate if there's any plans to expand access to new companies.
Sure.
So do you understand what that question was? You understand what that question was?
How come you're being so
A lot
mean
of
to
these
the
media
newbies?
outlets in here criticized you, and they've been really mean to you. Can you comment on their despicable behavior and pat me on the head and tell me I'm a good little boy for coddling your nutsack? How fucking gross are these? Jesus Christ. God, they're such rank propagandists, while at the same time glorifying themselves and filleting themselves and acting like, we're the new media, bro. We're like above the fray. We just keep it real with people, bro. By the way, yet again, here's another example. You know, the question was so utterly embarrassing when even fascist Barbie here, listen to her response, ready?
If there's any plans to expand access to new companies.
Sure. Well, we certainly welcome diverse viewpoints in this room.
Even she's like, hey, dog, ease a little bit with the hot stone massage. You're supposed to pretend to be objective. You're supposed to pretend to actually care about the truth. Can you tell me how bad these other media outlets are and how good I am as a good little lapdog for the regime, please? Well, we welcome a bunch of diverse viewpoints in the room. She's like, hey, this is supposed to be subtle, homie. Propaganda is supposed to be subtle. Oh my God, that's so embarrassing. I'm not done yet, though. I am not done yet, though. So this happened a few weeks back. You ready for this? If this wasn't humiliating enough, which to me, it's like, Jesus Christ. Could you imagine
I'll keep going a little
showing
bit.
up to a press conference in a Bernie Sanders presidency and being like, sir, you look so vibrant and so young and so amazing. And I must say I'm in awe of your vitality. Like this is the functional equivalent of that, right? Okay, here we go. So a few weeks back, this is from Jewish Insider, but this was reported at a number of different places. Tim Pool it was April 8th. Tim Pool went to the White House to meet with Benjamin Netanyahu.
Wow.
Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, you would think a smarter person would go, why does this guy want to meet with me? And is this really a good look for me to do this? Not Tim. Oh, not Tim. Here we go. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu tried to push back against anti-Israel trends in the right-wing media world by holding a briefing on Monday in the Blair House for podcasters and other media figures. Sources in the meeting told Jewish Insider on Tuesday.
Okay, you can go to his channel and watch the rest if you want to see it. That's the Kyle Kulinski show. And yeah, I think he's got some good points, man. I don't really watch him, but it was sent to me, so I looked, and a lot of the stuff that he broadcasts, I don't really agree with. But in this case, it's I think pretty much on point. And I hope that gives you some, greater perspective. And I'm not trying to pick on one side or the other. This is just an example. It goes on all over the place. I think, though, in Canada right now in particular, the conservatives are sort of dominating the independent, the social media blogosphere, while the liberals, I think because they do have a little more sympathy and alignment with the mainstream media, but not entirely. They maybe haven't felt the need to develop that social media network to the same degree. So I think it's hurting them in this election, because we've seen just in the past few days, the conservatives really close that gap and narrow the race in the Canadian election. Now, Kyle Kulinski was making reference to the situation in Ukraine, and I can tell you that things on the effort to bring peace kind of, well, sort of fallen apart. I don't think it's honestly that big of a surprise, because what are we seeing here? We're seeing the Trump effort, which was supposed to be so successful that he would end the war in 24 hours upon taking office. Just, it hasn't happened. It's a bunch of bunk. And so today, we've seen that this latest round of this effort to bring peace through these talks, I believe in London, have basically fallen apart. And President Trump, let me see if I can find you his post slamming Zelensky, of course, because he can't accept responsibility himself. And so it looks like his team has basically thrown up its hands and walked away from these peace talks. Now, the feedback coming out of Europe, a lot different than what's coming out of the White House. Here's Trump's post on Truth Social. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is boasting on the front page of the Wall Street Journal that Ukraine will not legally recognize the occupation of Crimea. There's nothing to talk about here. That was the quote from Zelensky. Ukraine will not legally recognize the occupation of Crimea. There's nothing to talk about here. And Trump goes on and says, this statement is very harmful to peace negotiations with Russia, in that Crimea was lost years ago under the auspices of President Barack Hussein Obama and is not even a point of discussion. Nobody is asking Zelensky to recognize Crimea as Russian territory. But if he wants Crimea, why didn't they fight for it 11 years ago when it was handed over to Russia without a shot being fired? The area also houses, for many years before the Obama handover, major Russian submarine bases. It's inflammatory statements like Zelensky's that makes it so difficult to settle this war. He has nothing to boast about. The situation for Ukraine is dire. He can have peace, or he can fight for another 3 years before losing the whole country. I have nothing to do with Russia. But have much to do with wanting to save on average 5,000 Russian and Ukrainian soldiers a week. That's whatever, who are dying for no reason whatsoever. The statement made by Zelensky today will do nothing but prolong the killing field, and nobody wants that. We are very close to a deal, but the man with no cards to play should now finally get it done, in all caps. I look forward to being able to help Ukraine and Russia get out of this complete and total mess that would never have started if I were president. Oh, man. Okay. This is a guy who made a promise during the election to end the war in 24 hours. Did not happen because it was just all bombast. And this assertion that Crimea was handed over without a shot being fired, not entirely accurate. Because in 2014, what happened is that Russia, first of all, let's just establish that Crimea has been part of Ukraine since the fall of the Soviet Union. It was before anyway, but was the boundary lines, the boundaries for the country of Ukraine includes Crimea. 2014, Russia invaded and took over Crimea. And it's not that there wasn't a shot fired. There was some armed resistance at the time when Russia annexed Crimea. That was in 2014. The annexation followed a swift, though, and was largely bloodless, led by Russian forces, because they went in quickly, seized key infrastructure and military bases, and there was then a controversial referendum. Sounding familiar? Referendum? Where do they want to have a referendum? Who's pushing for? Are there people pushing for a referendum someplace on separation? Where am I hearing that these days? I don't know. It seems like it's echoing pretty close to home, but I digress. And then Ukrainian forces stationed in Crimea, around 20,000 or so, were caught off guard and faced this dilemma. They could either resist, surrender, or defect. And what happened, if you go and listen to General Wesley Clark, who's commented on this, very familiar with the whole scenario back in 2014, he has said that the U.S. advised Ukraine not to mount a full pushback at that time. He said that the U.S. advising Ukraine against mounting a full-scale armed resistance during the 2014 annexation of Crimea. In his remarks back then, he, following the Maidan revolution and the ousting of Yanukovych, Russia then moved quickly to annex Crimea. And I've heard him talking about it. And he said the reason the U.S. advised Ukraine not to mount a full-scale pushback in Crimea was because the United States wanted to secure cooperation from Russia in the Middle East to make sure that Iran didn't secure nuclear weapons. So they were basically, again, tying not just one, but both arms behind the back of Ukraine so that they really couldn't mount a full-scale pushback at the time. But it didn't mean that they had ceded the territory officially, still recognized as part of Ukraine. But because they didn't push back there, it also facilitated armed conflict up in the Donbass. And then when Trump says that the war never would have started had he been president, the conflict continued from Obama into the Trump administration, which Trump did nothing about. Now, you may recall he did finally send Javelin missiles. That was to address the threat of Russia possibly launching a full-scale invasion of the country above and beyond the civil war that was fueled and armed by these little green men, which were Russian soldiers, not wearing Russian insignia, but now acknowledged even by Russia as having been there. And there was this armed conflict, a civil war of sorts, that was continuing all through the first Trump administration. The war was ongoing. It started even before Trump took office the first time and continued on through the administration. But the narrative that was spun up at the time was that the Ukrainian government was shelling its own people for no reason. You go back and you find some of these pro-Russia, even pro-MAGA commentators at that time, and that was the way they were spinning it. There was just no reason. They were just doing it because they hated the people there, because they, I don't know, spoke some Russian, because there was a bigger Russian diaspora there, a lot of history behind that, but that is sort of more largely populated by a Russian-speaking population. But that was beside the point. It wasn't for no reason. It's because there was a civil uprising at the time that was facilitated, made possible by Russia, which armed the rebels at that time. So the war was continuing. It was ongoing, and Trump did nothing to stop it during his entire first administration. So this whole idea that there was this he talks about the naval base there. Yeah, that's very true. There was the Russians already had a naval base in Sevastopol, and there was a lease agreement with the Ukrainian government. so that they could have their ships there. But that wasn't enough for Putin. No, he wanted to take control of Crimea. So he did. But it wasn't entirely bloodless. There was some pushback, but then the US government advised Ukraine to please don't, just give it to them for now. And so they did at the request of the US government. But they never ceded the territory. They never said that we're giving it up. They were leaving it for a later date. Now that it's against the Ukrainian constitution for them to accept the terms that have been laid out in this most recent round of peace negotiations, and Zelensky will have none of it, nor will the people of Ukraine at this time. And so you're seeing now this U.S. delegation setting this up really about 3 or 4 days ago, saying that they may have to just give up on these peace talks. It's just too hard. But Trump said it was going to be really easy. And now, of course, Trump really has to save face because he promised the American people that he would just bring this thing to an end. And I suppose he could by just walking away and abandoning the Ukrainians and pulling all U.S. support. And then maybe if there isn't enough support from the European side through the other NATO partners, Ukraine could potentially fall if you pull all of the support from them. And we'll see where all of it goes. But if that happens, you will see a further erosion in U.S. trust, a further erosion of U.S. relationships with its traditional allies since World War II, and a further destabilization globally as NATO fractures even more, because countries that have been aligned with the United States will feel very vulnerable, and you're going to see the proliferation as well, I'm sure, of more nuclear weapons over time. But Europe has, and I don't know if Trump has received a memo on this, but if you go back and you look at what's been going on over the last couple of months because of this new Trump administration, Europe has really pretty much gotten together, and through this coalition of the willing, they've decided they've drawn the line in Ukraine. They're not giving up on it. That's the way it appears. So this conflict's still far from over. Regardless of what we're hearing from the Trump administration tonight, the Ukrainians will continue to fight. Of that, I am pretty certain. And we'll get, and I won't leave you with my assessment alone. We'll get an expert on here. We'll get Mike back on, or somebody else, some other people to comment on this in the days ahead as well, because this is going to be an important story that unfolds. And here's J.D. Vance commenting on this tonight.
We've issued a very explicit proposal to both the Russians and the Ukrainians, and it's time for them to either say yes or for the United States to walk away from this process. We've engaged in an extraordinary amount of diplomacy, of on-the-ground work. We've issued a...
So you're going to walk away from the process. He promised he was going to end this thing. And don't forget that the United States, Trump, Biden, whatever, the United States made promises here. And to just walk away, you're damaging the U.S. reputation worldwide. But hey, Trump has done a really good job of that, not just when it comes to promises made militarily, but also economically, just tearing up trade deals willy-nilly, imposing these massive tariffs, going to, launching this trade war, not just with Canada, but also especially with China. And here's this story today talking about China and Canada. The Chinese ambassador to Canada saying that China wants to partner with Canada to push back against American bullying. And as I'm reading the story, I mean, I have to say, I'm kind of like, yeah, sounds like way friendlier. Let me just read some of this piece to you. China's ambassador says Beijing is offering to form a partnership with Canada to push back against American bullying, suggesting the two countries could rally other nations to stop Washington from undermining global rules. Yeah. Quote, "We want to avoid the situation where humanity is brought back to a world of the law of the jungle again." Very valid point. Chinese ambassador Wang Di told the Canadian press. China, he says, is Canada's opportunity, not Canada's threat. Wang, whose office requested the interview with the Canadian press, said that China and Canada appear to be the only countries taking, quote, concrete and real countermeasures against the unjustified U.S. tariffs imposed by U.S. President Donald Trump. Quote, we have taken notice that faced with the U.S.'s unilateral bullying, Canada has not backed down, he said. Instead, Canada is standing on the right side of the history, on the right side of international fairness and justice. It goes on. I'm sorry, it makes sense to me. And I think if you trade and do business with different countries more, you're far less likely to go to war with them, which was largely the objective behind opening up trade with China to begin with. That's what Nixon went to China for. Says here, quote, the mercenary use of tariffs and non-tariff barriers that we're seeing from the Trump administration has been practiced for a long time by China in different forms, Paris said. That is Roland Paris, who leads the University of Canada's Graduate School of International Affairs. He says Beijing has long sought to reshape international institutions to advance its own interests, efforts that have put China at odds with Ottawa's foreign policy. And so, yes, there are concerns about China, especially with regard to, violating patents, trademarks, copyright, theft of intellectual property, all those kinds of things, and even national security, to be sure, because China is not entirely an ally. They are a competitor, some would say, an adversary. People, though, I would say are also being fed a degree of, heavy-duty propaganda that is originating mostly on the U.S. side, the U.S. conservative side, where I think some of this stuff is exaggerated, and then it is also echoed up here in Kanakistan, which they like when I call it Kanakistan, because it suggests we're a very communistic kind of country. But I can tell you up front and without equivocation tonight that Canada is in no way a communist country. I joke about it because we are socialist. We have become a more socialistic country in my lifetime, to be sure, especially since the reign of Pierre Elliott Trudeau, but we are not a communist nation. That being said, I would like to see a future where we get along with both the Chinese and America. And maybe if we can all learn to work together, we can learn to live together. And just remember that there's a war on for your minds.
The sharing of biased and
false news has become all too common on social media. More alarmingly, some media outlets simply aren't true without checking facts first. Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think, and this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
In an ocean of lies a century deep, the truth awaits. Choose not the red pill. Choose not the blue pill. For both are an illusion. Discover the power of M. The power of individuality. We are mavericks. We are the way to the light. Fear not the storm. Join our quest for truth. Truth will set you free. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals. Defenders of individual rights and freedoms. Credible. Trusted. Grounded in reality. Maverick News. Maverick News. Defending free speech. Free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Too late. Too late. Too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
So, I don't know if I don't really do this, but I wasn't sure how I was going to deal with this. People wondering about the chat being turned off over on our YouTube channels, and it has been turned off on what has. I've always tried to make a free speech platform. So, this is not exactly news, but it is a commentary on the state of our family, our community, and these channels. Maverick News. People wondering what's going on there. I can tell you that, yeah, the chats have not been functional for, this is, I think, the 4th day. There are reasons for that. Our experiment in free speech has not exactly been a resounding success. And that's what it has been, because we tried, no rules. And it has been a descent into darkness in many respects. More than that, it's been a disaster on some of the channels, because there's more than one YouTube channel. And I've had 2 channels deleted by YouTube, taken right down. Yeah, just out of the blue for comments made through the channel. I remember just a few months ago, one of the channels, not one of the more popular ones, the smaller channels, backup channels, where stuff had been broadcast, stuff in the chat, and then I was working out of town one day to actually pay the bills here, because we don't get Russian funding or conservative money or anybody's money. We just don't. So I'm, out working, and I got a notification from YouTube, and I thought it was the main channel on YouTube, and it wasn't, thank goodness, where we still have a large following. But then it became apparent that we've just got problems, and what are you going to do? What has been going on in the chat? On those YouTube channels, I've noticed that it's just become toxic. The people, a lot of them in the one channel in particular, not really talking about sometimes even the content in the program. It's just become a place to hang out, and I think even just dominate the space to push other people away, to prevent the channel from growing. And then in addition to that, we've had hacking issues. We've had just a variety of problems that have really damaged the channel. And I'm not accusing everybody of doing this, but there are some people who have been going in there and they've been using access to damage the channel and cause problems, so that we have problems with YouTube. And there are rules through YouTube that go beyond what I'm, anything I impose, because I've tried to stay arm's length from it. I've tried a variety of ways of dealing with this social media experiment, and I think it has been a very interesting exercise all the way along. But a lot of this stuff I don't even control. Now, I can get into some of the reasons why the YouTube chat has been shut down. But first of all, the people who are pointing their finger at me, how do you even know that I'm responsible for the chat being shut down? You don't know anything. And I wasn't gonna really I wasn't sure how to deal with this, but the attacks on me over the past 4 days, fine. But some of this stuff is now coming real close to home. We're dealing with politics, a lot of variety, many people with many different perspectives, opinions. No, I'm not going to sit back and let people lie. I'll call out lies, straight up lies when I see it, because I do believe in trying to get people closer to the truth. These are more complex things. But here's the thing. Nobody knows why those chats were shut down. Was it me? Was it YouTube? Was it somebody else? How do you know? Nobody knows. People jump into conclusions. You don't know why. Nobody knows why. And yet I get this text. This from my good friend, and I'm going to name the name because people want to name names. I'm going to name the name tonight because this one really sticks in my craw. Chris. My good friend, Chris, out in Alberta, texting me on my personal number. Just automatically assuming, like I disabled it. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. Chris, why have you turned off commenting on both YouTube channels? Thought this was a free speech show. People want to know why. Well, I'm telling you why, sort of. So this goes on over the past couple of days, these messages from Chris, my good friend, who has at times in the past too kind of flip-flopped in that regard. Well, all the best on your show, she says. 3 days you have turned off comments on YouTube. I refuse to watch a program that restricts free speech. Bye. Well, first of all, Chris, I'm sorry you feel that way, my friend. But I wasn't aware that I was obligated, first of all, to provide chat on YouTube. Secondly, I've been telling people for the past probably 4 to 6 months that the main YouTube channel is in the process of being decommissioned because it's been damaged over time. So I am in the process of taking the whole thing, like just not using it, because it's in a state of degrowth because of all the attacks from people who say they're in favor of free speech, but then actually go and launch these attacks on the channel, not just about personal attacks on me. That's not really what I'm talking about. There's a lot of that's been going on in there from people who, for whatever reason, have just decided that they hate me because I'm not towing the line on the narrative that reinforces their political or ideological bias or whatever messaging they think that it is that I'm supposed to be towing the line on. So they're just coming after me. And I know there's a lot of this kind of stuff that goes on other channels as well, but it's gone way beyond that. So that they're using tactics to have the channel basically shut down and have subscriptions delisted by YouTube. And it just goes on and on. And a lot of it comes through the chat, which people are not really aware of. Not trying to sound mean. She is kind of a mean girl right now. But you stopping free speech is disgusting. Well, Chris, in case you haven't noticed, we've got chats open on other channels. And again, I'm not stopping your free speech. I was providing a platform to expand free speech here. We also have a call-in show, Chris, and I've invited you to call in for some time, and you haven't done that for quite a while. Only just recently did you call in, because I guess you must have had a falling out with somebody on the other side or something. I don't know why, but you did call in, and you've called me personally, and I like talking to you because you actually are, whether you like it or not, you're my friend. And so when you've called me in the last month and we've had personal conversations, I've enjoyed speaking with you. And you're always welcome to call in here, and I will always treat you with respect. But what you're doing here, as far as I'm concerned, kind of crossing the line. Because you're coming into my personal space and attacking me without even really having all the information yet or understanding why. And frankly, I don't have to give you an explanation, or anyone, because this is my platform and I'm responsible for it. I'm responsible, frankly, for what other people say on this platform. She goes on, you should be ashamed of yourself. From my friend, Chris. Perhaps if you would stop being so bitchy and nasty with callers and guests, you would not have to worry about chat. It seems your way or the highway. I have had people on this program who are communists. I've had people on this program who have literally flown flags with swastikas on them. I've had people on this program who are conservatives, liberals, socialists, from across the political spectrum. I've had the PPC on here. I've had conservatives. I've had liberals. I've had them all. I've had pro-Trump. I've had pro-Biden. I've had them all. I run the speeches tonight of Poilievre and Carney, mentioning Singh, at least giving him a mention. I've run speeches from him as well. I run it all. But it's my way or the highway? Chris? My friend? No wonder you have less than 150 viewers, if that. Well, we do have considerably more than that if you go and actually look at the stats, Chris. But I'm not in it for the clicks or the ratings. I'm in it because I'm trying to practice actual journalism. But polarization is rewarded by the algorithms on social media. And on top of that, I don't leverage the viewer count with money. I don't buy the views. Nor do I promote it because we don't have a budget to do it with anyway. But you can leverage these channels with paid advertising. You can pay the social media companies to push these videos out in front of people. And you can buy subscribers too. But we don't do that. Because I'm a real person on a real channel and I ain't getting no money. Except from our supporters, viewers, who actually support the channel. And we get the occasional donation. And for that, I am extremely humbled and grateful. She goes on, perhaps look at other podcasters, thousands of viewers. Yeah, I know. We have thousands every night as well. Maybe not hundreds of thousands. I did at one time. I had 150,000 views a night on this channel. But I sacrificed it because I was committed to delivering messaging that was in the public interest, not in the interest of clicks, views, ratings. And that went back some time ago, a couple of years ago. I literally sacrificed the channel. And you may recall the specific time period when that was going on, because it was the right thing to do at the time. You are biased and one-sided lately, and it shows, she says. Colin is a joke. It was better one-on-one, not everyone being attacked by your three minions, Rimby John, Dragon, and Isabel. They're not my minions. They call in to participate in the chat, to exercise their right to free speech. They're welcome to do so, and so are you, Chris. But you don't, because you're a coward. Largely. You only call in when you think that you're going to be in alignment and so that you don't get attacked. And that's where a lot of this is coming from tonight. It's cowardice, because you're afraid of the mob. And you don't have your facts straight. She says, these three don't help your ratings. Yes, they do. They support the channel through their actions, through their contributions, just by calling in and sharing their views and their constructive conversation. They do help. And I value them as I do all the people in our community. Chris, they're good people. They're real people. And that's also what this channel is largely about. I learned a long time ago, practicing journalism, that to tell a real story is to go out and tell the story of real people. Not always politicians or somebody with a high profile or a personality or a celebrity, someone with, getting somebody on your channel who's got a high viewer count, large subscription base. Tim Pool has millions of followers. Let's get him on the channel. Then our ratings will go up. No, I don't always do that. In fact, I kind of go out of my way to talk to real people, ordinary people, to tell real stories about people with real lives so that we understand how people are impacted every day by real world circumstances and the actions of some of these personalities, celebrities, politicians, oligarchs, rich people, people who seem to control things, many of whom aren't even real. They're characters playing a role in our world where you think you know them, but you really only know them through social media. But I want to know more about the guy sitting out in front of the supermarket holding that cardboard sign asking for help. Wondering what's going to happen to him when Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives sweep to power and empower police to go in and get rid of those illegal encampments. What's that going to look like? I wonder. Will the police be coming to help or hide? I don't know. But it's a valid question, and the person sitting out in front of that supermarket deserves an answer. And I'll be checking in because that's my job, Chris. She says, when you start hating, being bitchy and nasty, time to give it up. Wow. Do you support the channel, Chris? Do you? I remember, Chris, when you phoned me as a friend in need some time ago. You didn't know where to turn. And you were part of the Maverick family. You needed help. Who did you call? Me. I'm telling you right now, man, I don't have much to give because I'm not taking anything out of that $10 million tenant media fund. Probably could have. Not here. You came to me. And you know what they say? A friend in need is a friend indeed. And I came and supported you. That's why it kind of sticks in my craw. And what's happened here? Attacks. I can take the attacks on me, but there was nothing constructive going on in those chats anyway. Not at this point. Not on those YouTube channels. Not really. Nothing constructive. No real discussion about, the issues that we're dealing with here on this channel. You want to know why this channel isn't growing? Why I'm decommissioning those YouTube channels? Because of that reason. The toxicity, certain trolls in there who come in as operatives with a purpose to destroy what we're doing. You know why, Chris? Because I'm not just sitting here as an influencer. I'm not a propagandist. I'm a dinosaur. I'm a fossil from the past, from the before times. And my history goes way back. Right? I've been showing you this. I've been doing this since I was a kid. This is how old I am. I'm a fossil in a new media age. I understand that. I understand film, and I understand this. And you know why? Because the fundamentals never change. The reason I've survived as long as I have, and I'm old and I'm moldy, but I'm just getting started, Chris. And the reason is I've been able to survive, and that's the key to the whole thing. It's not about ratings. It's not about the clicks. It's not because I'm not a shooting star. I don't have the perfect blonde hair and the perfect makeup. But I have my damn integrity. And I've got my soul. And after all this time working in this business, man, that's saying something because it's hard. It's hard to survive in this business because you're never going to get rich unless you sell out. But I've seen a lot of people come. I've seen a lot of people go. And I'm still here. Serving you, Chris, my friend. My message to you tonight, Chris, is don't be afraid. There's a mob out there, and they ain't friendly. And they say they're for free speech. No, they're not. They don't use outright censorship to shut you up and shut you down, but they do use other techniques to intimidate you, to attack you, to destroy you behind the scenes, to damage your channel, to leave you in a state of fear, where you even feel emboldened to take a knife and stick it into the back of a friend. But it's okay. I understand. Because whether you like it or not, I'm still your friend. Because I understand. And I know that you don't. Because you're not here. You don't know the circumstances. You don't know the reasons why that chat room has been shut off for the past 4 nights. And there are really valid reasons for it that go beyond even the things that I'm talking about right here. Reasons that really tie into my love of my country and my dedication to true free speech. Hard for people to understand because you don't always know everything going on. But that's why I need my integrity. Because I need your trust. So yeah, what was it that you said there, Chris? And thank you, CBC Brown, for the donation. Truly, truly appreciate it. And what was it that you said? You said time to. Oh yeah, here it is. Here, this long, long text. Time to give it up. Nuh-uh. No. Still work to be done. This old fossil. Not giving up. I hope you won't either. See y'all back here tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern, on the flip side.
I heard old Cosmo howling last night up on the hill where the moon shines so bright. He was singing a tune, lonesome dogs cry about freedom, running and touching the sky. If I leave here tomorrow, would you still remember me? Cosmo's free, running wild, wild as a wind can be. He's a free dog, he's a free dog, he's a free dog. Cosmo's got them paws that just itch to roam. He's chasing his dreams, he's far from home. With a heart full of love and a spirit so free, he's living his life wild and carefree. If I leave here tomorrow, would you still remember me? Cosmo's free, running wild, wild as a wind can be. He's a free dog, he's a free dog, he's a free dog. He's got the stars in his eyes, the wind in his fur, a tail that wags like it's never heard of a blur. Cosmo's on a journey, he's got no chains. He's running through fields, breaking all the lanes. Now the night's getting cold and the sky's turning gray, but Cosmo's still out there, he's miles away. He's not looking back, he's got his path to tread. With every step, he's leaving his path. If I leave here tomorrow, would you still remember me? Cosmo's free, running wild, wild as a wind can be. He's a free dog, he's a free dog, he's a free dog. So if you're feeling lost, just think of Cosmo's run. Remember his spirit, his freedom, his fun. And maybe one day, when you're feeling alone, you'll find your own freedom and let your spirit go. If I leave here tomorrow, would you still remember me? Cosmo's free, running wild, wild as a wind can be. He's a free dog, he's a free dog, he's a free dog. He's got the stars in his eyes, the wind in his fur, a tail that wags like it's never heard of a bird. A heart full of love and a spirit so free. He's living his life wild and carefree. He's got the stars in his eyes, the wind in his fur, a tail that wags like it's never heard a bird. Cosmo's on a journey, he's got no chains. He's running through fields, breaking all the lanes.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.